Imagine walking into fog so thick you can't see your own hands, knowing that invisible death is hunting you from every direction while the ground beneath your feet is deliberately designed to kill you. January 10, 1475 and 20,000. Moldavian soldiers stood in a fog-shrouded valley that they'd spent 3 years transforming into a death trap, waiting to face 120,000 Ottoman warriors who had no idea they were walking into history's most devastating tactical ambush. By sunset, 45,000 Ottoman corpses would litter frozen earth while the defenders lost just 4,500 men, a 10-to-1 kill ratio that still makes military historians question the numbers. This is the story of how a tiny nation's prince spent 3 years turning geography into genocide. How frozen rivers became mass graves for thousands, drowning under ice. Why fog proved deadlier than swords. And the 3-word message that changed European history forever. Think about what Stephen the Great accomplished with cold calculation. He diverted streams to create hidden marshes that looked solid but swallowed horses. He studied fog patterns for 3 years to know exactly when nature would blind his enemies. He built hidden artillery positions and trained peasant farmers to become coordinated killing machines. The mathematics were insane. 120,000 Ottoman warriors, the same army that had conquered Constantinople and terrorized Europe, reduced to panicked refugees by shepherds and farmers who knew every rock and tree. How did Stephen know exactly when and where the massive Ottoman army would attack? The answers lie in 3 years of preparation that transformed a small principality into a weapon. The year 1453 had changed everything for Christian Europe in the most catastrophic way possible. Constantinople, the jewel of Christendom that had stood for over 1,000 years, had fallen to Ottoman cannons after weeks of bombardment that shattered walls Roman emperors had built. Sultan Mehmed II, barely 21 years old, had achieved what countless Muslim rulers had failed to accomplish. Now he was no longer just a sultan, he was the conqueror, and his appetite for territorial expansion seemed limitless and unstoppable. By 1474, Ottoman armies had systematically swallowed the Balkans, reduced Hungary to a nervous tributary state, and turned the Black Sea into an Ottoman lake. Venice trembled behind its naval walls. Poland prayed daily for deliverance. The Pope called for crusades that never materialized because European princes were too busy fighting each other. Christianity itself seemed to be retreating before an Islamic tide that nothing could stop. But in the small principality of Moldavia, wedged between Poland, Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire like a geographical buffer, ruled a different kind of prince who understood that preparation mattered more than prayers. Stephen III had inherited his throne at just 23 after fighting his own uncle for the crown in brutal civil war. In the 17 years since, he'd fought 36 battles against impossible odds and won them all through tactical genius. His people called him Stefan Selmer, Stephen the Great. Foreign ambassadors described him differently with both admiration and fear. Short in stature, but a giant indeed in matters of war. Moldavia wasn't just another province on the Ottoman target list, it was the gateway to Central Europe. Control it, and Ottoman armies could pour into Poland and Hungary simultaneously. Lose it, and Christian Europe kept its critical buffer that had saved them for generations. The principality stretched from the Carpathian Mountains to the Black Sea coast, a land of deep forests, winding rivers, and fog-prone valleys that could become either sanctuary or graveyard depending on who controlled them. The terrain itself was a weapon if you knew its secrets. The Ottoman tribute system had worked smoothly for decades through calculated extortion. Christian vassals paid gold to the Sultan, measured in tons. The Sultan left them semi-autonomous to govern themselves. It was protection money on a continental scale, but it bought peace and survival. Stephen had paid at first 40,000 gold florins annually, enough to bankrupt most kingdoms, a sum that made Moldavian peasants starve. But then something changed in Stephen's calculations. He stopped paying tribute with deliberate defiance. Worse, from the Ottoman perspective, he started raiding Ottoman territories systematically, freeing Christian slaves, burning Turkish settlements, and killing tax collectors. Sultan Mehmed II the Conqueror took personal notice. This was the man who'd conquered Constantinople through siege warfare genius, annexed Anatolia through military campaigns, and made emperors kneel or die. His military machine was the most advanced on Earth, with technological and tactical superiority. Elite Janissary infantry trained from childhood. Sipahi cavalry, whose grandfathers had conquered half of Asia. Massive siege artillery that could reduce castle walls to rubble. And most terrifyingly, seemingly limitless manpower from an empire spanning 3 continents. When Mehmed decided to destroy a nation, that nation ceased to exist within months. Stephen knew the storm was coming with mathematical certainty. But rather than flee like a coward or submit like a slave, he did something extraordinary that would change warfare. He prepared systematically for 3 years. Every village trained with weapons until farmers could shoot arrows with deadly accuracy. Every valley was mapped for ambush potential. Every river crossing was studied for defensive possibilities and offensive opportunities. Gunpowder was stockpiled despite massive cost, imported secretly from Poland through intermediaries. Stephen even sent spies deep into Ottoman territory, learning their march routes, their supply systems, in their commander personalities, their tactical weaknesses. The warrior monk prince for Stephen heard mass twice daily even on campaign and never broke a religious vow, understood something Mehmed's generals didn't. Numbers meant absolutely nothing if you couldn't bring them to bear effectively. Ottoman military doctrine relied on overwhelming force applied in open battle to crush enemy armies through sheer mass. But what if there was no open battle? What if the enemy refused to fight where Ottoman advantages mattered? By winter 1474, Mehmed had assembled 120,000 men under the command of Suleiman Pasha Hadumbal for the Moldavian campaign. The force included 40,000 elite Janissaries and Sipahi, supported by Wallachian vassals, eager to prove their loyalty through Moldavian blood. Against this apocalyptic host, Stephen could muster perhaps 20,000 men total, peasant levies armed with whatever they could find. Boyar cavalry from noble families. Some Polish mercenaries hired at ruinous cost, and his own household guard. 6-to-1 odds. David versus Goliath written in military mathematics. Except this David had spent 3 years turning his homeland into a weapon that would make Goliath bleed. The Ottoman army that crossed into Moldavia in December 1474 was a terrifying sight that should have guaranteed victory. At its core marched 12,000 Janissaries, the elite slave soldiers stolen as children from Christian families, converted to Islam, trained from childhood in warfare, devoted only to the Sultan. They'd never lost a major battle in living memory. Their discipline was legendary throughout 3 continents. They could march in perfect formation through arrow storms without breaking ranks. Supporting them came 20,000 Sipahi cavalry, feudal horsemen, whose fathers and grandfathers had conquered from Baghdad to Belgrade, each maintaining his own expensive equipment and competing for glory and plunder. Behind the elite units streamed 60,000 Azab irregulars, volunteers seeking fortune and paradise through holy war.